Welcome everyone. It is 3 p.m. and it's time for the Server Room Show. This is episode 55. Today we will continue the journey after last week episode 54. We continue now on episode 55 in the world of text editors. In the last episode we discussed about one of the early ones, ED, EX. We spoke about VI and and Vim. VI improved, and we spoke about Emacs. So we handled the two biggest one, and I mentioned that there are a good couple of other ones left to talk about. I hope you enjoyed the previous episode, episode 54. So let's continue now, episode 55. Text editors part 2. The first one I would like to mention is GNU Nano or GNU Nano, depends on how you pronounce it. The ones who looking at my screen, you can see it's a very simple text editor with on the bottom part of the screen takes up the help and key combinations, which tells you which key combination can do what. Normally using a meta key and combined with some other key like Control and X or Control and O or Control and T for spell checking. GNU Nano is a text editor for Unix-like computing systems or operating environments using a command line interface. It emulates the Pico text editor, part of the Pine email client, and also provides additional functionality. Unlike Pico, Nano is licensed under the GNU General Public License, released as free software by Chris Allegretta in 1999. Nano became part of the GNU project in 2001. GNU Nano was first created in 1999 with the name TIP, a recursive anonym for TIP isn't Pico, by Chris Allegretta. His motivation was to create a free software replacement for Pico, which was not distributed under a free software license. The name was changed to Nano on the 10th of January 2000 to avoid a naming conflict with the existing Unix utility TIP. The name comes from the system of SI prefixes, in which Nano is 1,000 times larger than Pico. In February 2001, Nano became a part of the GNU project. GNU Nano implements several features that Pico lacks, including syntax highlighting, line numbers, regular expression search and replace, line-by-line scrolling, multiple buffers in denting groups of lines, rebindable key support, and the undoing and redoing of edit changes. GNU Nano, like Pico, is keyboard-oriented, controlled with control keys. For example, Control plus O saves the current file, whereas Control plus W goes to the search menu. GNU Nano puts a two-line shortcut bar at the bottom of the screen listing many of the commands available in the current context. For a complete list, Ctrl plus G gets the help screen. Unlike Pico, Nano uses meta keys to toggle its behavior. For example, meta key plus S toggles smooth scrolling mode on and off. Almost all features that can be selected from the command line can be dynamically toggled. On keyboards without the meta key, it is often mapped to the escape key, ESC, such that in order to simulate, say, meta plus S, one has to press the ESC key, then release it, and then press the S key. GNU Nano can also use pointer devices such as a mouse to activate functions that are on the shortcut bar, as well as position the cursor. The next one is one of the modern ones, Atom. You can see the screenshot in the show notes and also on my screen if you're watching the video recording or video cast of this episode. Atom is a free and open source text and source code editor for macOS, Linux and Microsoft Windows, with support for plugins written in JavaScript and embedded Git control developed by GitHub. Atom is a desktop application built using web technologies. Most of the extending packages have free software licenses and are community built and maintained. Atom is based on Electron, formerly known as Atom Shell, a framework that enables cross-platform desktop applications using Chromium and Node.js. It is written in CoffeeScript and Less. Like most other configurable text editors, Atom enables users to install third-party packages and themes to customize the feature and looks of the editor. Packages can be installed, managed and published via Atom's Package Manager APM. Syntactic highlighting support for other languages than the default can be installed through the packages as well as the autocomplete function. Atom's default packages can apply syntax highlighting for following programming languages and file formats. Quite a nice and extensive list, so you can see it in the show notes. All the main ones you can find: Bash, C, C++, C Sharp, CSS, D, Go, Markdown, HTML, Java, JSON, JavaScript, Kotlin, Make, Perl, PHP, SQL, XML, YAML. So quite a lot and extensive list. I used Atom myself. Actually, I use it quite often for very simple basic text editing needs. I think I probably don't even have any of the plugins installed for syntax highlighting and stuff, but it's a simple editor and I like the interface, so it didn't require much configuration, to be honest. So why not? And sometimes, you know, all you need is a simple text editor. So thank God we have a lot to choose from. The next one is it used to be a big favorite of many programmers, Sublime Text. I don't know if it's still a favorite of many of today or not. I had colleagues who had license and bought Sublime Text for their coding needs for development and stuff. Sublime Text is a shareware cross-platform source code editor with a Python application programming interface API. It natively supports many programming languages and markup languages, and functions can be added by users with plugins, typically community built and maintained under free software licenses. It has nice features, column selection and multi-select editing. It's a feature which allows users to select entire columns at once or place more than one cursor in text, which allows for simultaneous editing. It's quite a nice feature. All cursors then behave as if each of them was the only one in the text. Commands like move by character, move by line, text selection, move by words or move by subwords, camel case, hyphen or underscore delimited, move to beginning and end of the line, and so on, affect all cursors independently, allowing one to edit slightly complex repetitive structures quickly without the need of to use macros or regex. Auto-completion. Sublime Text will offer to complete entries as the user is typing depending on the language being used. It is also auto-completes variables created by the user. Syntax highlight and high contrast display, another feature. The dark background on Sublime Text is intended to reduce eye strain and increase the amount of contrast with the text. Syntax highlighting also makes syntaxes of the language easier to read. That's one of the things why I like Atom, which is a more simple text editor for me in this sense than Sublime Text, because of that nice dark background, and it's easier to see the things on it. In editor code building, This feature allows users to run code for certain languages from within the editor, which eliminates the need to switch out to the command line and back again. This function can also be set to build the code automatically every time the file is saved. Sublime Text can use snippets. This feature allows users to save blocks of frequently used code and assign keywords to them. The user can then type the keyword and press tab to paste the block of code whenever they require it. That's nice. Go to anything feature. This feature is a tool that allows users to switch between open, recent, or project files and also navigate to symbols within them. It has many other features, a number of features, just a few: the autosave, customizable key assignments, find as you type when you begin to look for the text as it's being entered, and the user can find the text while typing, so without requiring a separate dialog box for this function to work. Spell check functions corrects as you type. Macros, you can recall or repeat the last action taken, and a wide selection of editing commands, including indenting and unindenting, paragraph reformatting, and line joining. It has its own package manager. Package control is a third-party package manager for Sublime Text, which allows the user to find, install, upgrade, and remove plugins, usually without restarting Sublime Text. The package manager keeps installed packages up to date with an auto-upgrade feature and downloads packages from GitHub, Bitbucket, and custom JSON encoded channel or repository systems. It also handles updating packages cloned from GitHub and Bitbucket via Git and HG, as well as providing commands for enabling and disabling packages. The package manager also includes a command to bundle any package directory into a .sublime package file. It has quite a few notable third-party packages for many features. You can have a look at the show notes. I mentioned a few like the Git functional integration, or integrating with WordPress, or code linting, code validation for like JavaScript or Perl, PHP, Python, Ruby, and others. You can see the show notes regarding this. The next one, next text editor, is a user-friendly text editor written for the Midnight Commander, MC Edit. Sometimes, if you look at it, MC Edit, it's this typical text editor or very similar, the one used to be in Norton Commander, because MC Edit is, as it's part of the Midnight Commander package, it's a very popular multi-platform Norton Commander clone, which also runs under Linux, so hence the nearly 100% similarity between MC Edit and the Norton Commander as a built-in text editor. MC Edit's feature includes syntax highlighting for many languages, which is nice, macros, code snippets, simple integration with external tools, automatic indentation, mouse support, clipboard, and the ability to work in both ASCII and hexadecimal modes. I wanted to mention MC Edit because it's worth a mention. The next one is Xedit. You can see a screenshot in the show notes, or looking at this videocast. You can see the typical screen layout of Xedit, and I left a link to Wikipedia article with a detailed explanation of what is what on this screenshot you see. Xedit is a visual editor for VM/CMS, a family of IBM virtual machine operating systems used on IBM mainframe systems 370, System 390, Z series, System Z, and compatible systems, including the Hercules emulator for personal computers. Using block mode IBM 3270 terminals, line mode terminals are also supported. It is not a Unix or Linux text editor, but Xedit, but as you will see, it influenced editors created to other platforms such as DOS and Unix and Linux. That's why I wanted to include it here. Xedit is a much more line-oriented than modern PC and Unix editors. For example, Xedit supports automatic line numbers, and many of the commands operate on blocks of lines. A pair of features allows selective line and column editing. The all command, for example, hides all lines not matching the described pattern, and the call as column command allows hiding those columns not specified, hence changing, for example, the word no as it appears only in columns 24 through 28 to yes, and only on lines with the word flexible is completely a doable thing in Xedit. Another feature is a command line which allows the user to type arbitrary editor commands, because IBM's 3270 terminals do not transmit data to the computer until a certain special key or keys are pressed, such as the enter key or a program function key or a program access key. Xedit is less interactive than many PC and Unix editors. For example, continuous spell checking as the user types is problematic to do. When PCs and Unix computers began to supplant IBM 3270 terminals, some users wanted text editors that resembled the Xedit they were accustomed to. To fill this need, several developers provided similar programs. Kedit by Mansfield Software Group was the first Xedit clone. Although originally released in 1983, the first major release was version 3.53 for DOS, released in 1985. By 1990, Kedit 4.0 had a version supporting OS2 and included the all command. The last version for DOS and OS2 was Kedit 5.0 P4. Kedit W for Windows is at version 1.6.1, dated December 2012. Kedit 1.6 supports syntax highlighting for various languages including C#, COBOL, Fortran, HTML, Java, Pascal, and Xbase defined in the KLD file format. Kedit supports a built-in Rex subset called KEXX. Mansfield Software created the first non-IBM implementation of Rex, Personal Rex, in 1985. In December 2012, Mansfield Software released 1.6.1 to provide compatibility with Windows 8 and extended support to at least June 2015. These 32-bit versions work also in the 64-bit versions of Windows and Vista as well, but do not directly support Unicode, which can be a bummer for many. Sedit, first released in 1989, is another implementation on both Windows and Unix, which supports a variant of Rex language called S/Rex, announced in 1994. The next one is the Hessling editor. You can see a nice screenshot of the Hessling editor running a twin session on the in the show notes and on my screen right now in the videocast. It's an interesting piece of software, the Hessling editor. I didn't know about this until I researched for this episode. The Hessling editor is an open source text editor first released in August 1992. For more than 10 years it has been written and maintained by Mark Hessling, who, along with being the original author of the Hessling editor, is also a maintainer of Regina, an open source Rex interpreter that has been ported to most Unix platforms. At the 1993 Rex conference in La Jolla, California, Hessling discussed why he created this new text editor. Here is a quote from the 1993 Rex conference from Hessling about the history of the Hessling editor. The quote says, "Work began on the Hessling editor in 1990 after my then workplace purchased the Sun workstation. This then meant that I was using DOS, VMS and Unix. This meant using 3 different editors. Having used Xedit for a considerable period of time prior to 1990, I was keen to continue using an editor with the same capability and power. After receiving a copy of LED, Louis' editor, from Pierre Louis in Canada, I found that the only way to be able to use the same Xedit-like editor on a variety of operating systems was to write my own. Pierre assured me that writing an editor was wonderful for one's character. The original intention of the Hessling editor was to provide me with an editor I was happy with and had all the features of Xedit and Kedit that I used frequently. Once I had achieved this goal, I decided to make the Hessling editor available to anyone who also had a need for a multi-platform Xedit-like editor. The Hessling editor 1.0 was released to the public in August 1991. Since then, I began to add features that I still found lacking and that other users requested. This work resulted in the 1.1, which is publicly released at this symposium. This is from a link. You can find the PDF and the link to it from Proceedings of the Rex Symposium for Developers and Users, 1993, May 18 to 20, Loyola, California. Features of the Hessling editor: provision of both a graphic user interface along with a command line interface and the ability to edit a text file using either one or both. Availability of folding, which can be controlled in various sophisticated ways, keyword-based, indent-based, and so on. The use of Rex as macro language. Folding is controlled by the all command. It permits one to display and work on only those lines in a file that contain a given pattern. For example, the command all string / will display only the lines that includes the string. Any global changes one makes on this slice, for example, replace string command, will be reflected in the file. In most cases, this is a more convenient way to make global changes in the file. In order to restore visibility of all lines, one needs to enter all without a target string. Similar to Xedit, the Hessling editor uses IBM's Rex as its macro language, which makes it highly configurable and versatile. This provides the ability to create powerful extensions to the editor and or customize it to specialized needs. For example, one can create edit comments that would allow one to manipulate columns of text. For example, copy or move or insert or delete a column of text within a file. With Rex, one can also integrate OS commands or external functions into an edit session. Since version 3.0, the Hessling editor also has user-configurable syntax highlighting. While the Hessling editor and Xedit are not graphic user interface editors, the Hessling editor has its own syntax highlighting language definition in a .tld file format, which is comparable with Kedit's .kld format. An interesting fact that two of my favorite multi-OS available for various operating systems, Terminal Emulator, available for Windows, Mac and Linux. One of them is Secure CRT and another one is ZOC Terminal, Z Oscar Charlie, ZOC Terminal. Both of them supports Rex scripting, but the funny is that I never ever looked into Rex scripting. Most probably I should make an episode of the Server Room show about scripting languages, a little bit like I don't know, Bash, Rex. The thing is, I don't know how much I can talk about a scripting language that I don't think that I have the knowledge to academically speak about them and compare them and put them against one another. So maybe I would like to talk about them, but in in a more simple way with a couple of examples. We will see. The good thing is that you see I've already done 55 episodes of the Server Room Show. It means 55 weekends, as it comes out once a week every Saturday, 3 p.m. UTC time, as you know. And I'm not really running out of topic at all. Some episodes become 2-part episodes because I start preparing the show notes as always, and I'm always afraid that I come up short with the content, and most of the time what happens that there are much more content in the show notes than in the actual episode. I remember, for example, that in the episode about VDI and thin clients, I made a quite nice paragraph about the Pixie boot process, that how it works and how it happens, and I didn't have time to talk about it. So if you were clever enough and listen to that episode, for example, you could have realized that in the show notes there were much more information than what you heard on the 30-minute slot or a 30-minute episode, so to say. I'm not always mentioning that, come check the show notes, because there are possibly more information that I was able to share, but more often than that the situation or the case is that I have more in the show notes, and not even mentioning screenshots and the links. Some of the show notes, their biggest highlight is mostly the links itself, because it gives you all the background information or context I used to put the episode together. So maybe if you realize that something I said was incorrect, which it easily can happen, we are all humans, and some of the listeners are cats, but that you already know. You can look into the show notes and see what led to me to obtain incorrect information, because it's true that everything is on the internet, but we still need to make with it what I mean, that anyone can put anything on the internet. It doesn't make it true or right, so to say. So I normally try to cross-reference my links or my sources to come to the same conclusion. I remember the episode, for example, regarding where I spoke about SVN and GitHub and stuff. I had a lot of bad links to when I looked at comparisons between SVN and GitHub, and some of the sources are found. One was honestly worse than the other, but I tried to pull the most out of it, or make the most out of it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode about the text editors. It was a 2-part episode 54 and 55. As you saw, there are tons of text editors out there. There is no need to wage a war which text editor is better or can do more or less than the other. There are tons of text editor out there, and I think the important is that you pick the one you're comfortable with, and the one which does what you want it to do. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next Saturday.